Oh, there's a
I was in-
whole, that's a whole
But
thing.
it happened 3 times. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. It's gonna keep working.
And then once we start, we're gonna be writing the consent agenda.
Who's the lady that's in the mirror?
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary, she was trying to talk to you.
I do love that
Say
song.
hey.
Played it on Easter about 20 times, so. So, approval of the consent agenda 5.0. So it's the minutes from April 25th, 2023. There was 3 meetings, one open session, another open session, a closed session, and a whole bunch of annual dues. So I need to read all of those? No. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Thank you, Joanna. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Wonderful.
Mrs. LeBarge.
Aye.
Mrs. Grove. Aye. Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Petrowitz.
Aye. We're gonna move on to 6.0, the superintendent report.
All right, I'm gonna make the first few pretty quick. We have our PTA update. Tomorrow is our family read night over at Ridge Lawn. Unfortunately, I will not be there. They changed it from its original date because of the band concert. Well, I have my own son's band concert tomorrow, so I will not be there, but it's one of my favorite things to do. I feel like the celebrity with all the little kids wanting to come to my section. At least they make me feel good and they tell me they don't know who I am. So it works out great. We also have rescheduled the end of the year Blacktop Bash. That will be on Thursday, June 1st. First time we're doing something not on a Friday. I'm sure it will still be very well attended. We are looking at 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Usually we do it back here, but if you've been back here, that's not a good idea with the construction going on. So we're going to actually do it along the sidewalk in front of Finley there. And then hopefully the grass will be good because we looked at having it at Ridge Lawn, but the construction over there is about the same. So really it was either that or start talking to the park district. And we still wanted to host it here in our buildings. The last thing is our school improvement day on May 24th. They are planning on doing a dine and donate, but they're still calling a couple places. A lot stopped doing it during the pandemic. And so they're running into, no, we don't do that anymore. They're trying to find a good one for the last one. So our enrollment report 6.2, we are down 12 students from last month. This is typically a time where we do see a lot of students who leave and travel back with their families to their Middle East because the flights are much different. We have talked many times about encouraging people to stay and not to leave, but we still are down 16 students from last year across the district. Vacant positions, we have been filling positions like crazy. Our administration has been interviewing and we've had really solid candidates, much more so I would say than we have the last couple of years. Like we would be lucky in some of these positions to get one applicant. This year we've had multiple and really the only ones we're still having difficulty filling our one special ed position. And then speech language, we're getting some in, but not like a plethora of them. So we're still hopeful that we'll be able to fill those as well. So science, right?
That one was a hard one too, right?
So science right now, we have Kurt Hassan, who is with that St. Xavier program, who is going to be doing the student teaching while doing that. And we've talked about how important that is to hook him up with a really good mentor to be able to do that. But we'll also have a chance to mold him really how we are looking at doing. So we continue to look and that's where we are right now. So, yeah. 8th grade graduation. It feels good to talk about that because I'm excited. We had a great time. This was my first time getting to go to the Finley banquet. And it was really nice seeing them. And I thought overall very well behaved and just having a great time. But they're also coming up on graduation on Wednesday, June 7th. We're excited that we'll be over at Richards again. And if you could let Annette Robertson know, who is Finley's secretary, if you're going to be attending, and let her know by May 31st so that we can get you set up there. So, and if you have any questions, I'm sure Julie and Jeff would be happy to answer. This is another one I can't believe we're already talking about, but the Triple I Conference, November 17th through the 19th, it is already opening up on June 5th. So you have the dates if you are able to talk with everybody at home and see if you're going to be able to attend. Lori likes to get on the day it goes to get us the hotels. And I will say, I talk to superintendents all the time that say my secretary screwed up and called 2 days later and what the board and us wanted is gone. And so that's why we ask you to do it right away and she'll be on top of it and make sure we get it. So the consolidated district plan is something that we need to approve every year. It really there's so much paperwork for the state all the time. This really allows us to cover 12 grants just in one sitting, basically. So we just need to approve that every year that says we can go for these grants. 6.7, the Diopath contract for fiscal year 23-24. We have used Diopath for many years here. They provide us support. We have Saul over at Ridge Lawn, which has worked out well this year. Last year, it did not work out well for us, the person, which is why we requested a new one. They also provide some of the different skill sets and some additional hours that we need. And the plan long term, and we've talked about it, I've sat down with Gino basically 3 times in the last 2 weeks. We've been looking at different programs for him to go back to school to get some of these certifications that are above what he has. But right now we still do need Diopath support for this, with the hope that as we continue to move forward, that we will be able to back off. Now, one of the things that we had happened before the pandemic, we were building up all these hours that we had. Like you have to say you're going to use so many. We weren't using them and we we're just building them up. Now that we have all these devices and we've changed our hotspot points and just all these, even putting in the cameras with Blue Point, we had to have Diopath out. So we have been for these hours. So we are requesting some additional hours for next year. But we're basically looking at a 5% increase for inflation, which is really typical for almost all of our contracts right now. And then an additional 5 hours of support a month, with the goal of slowly coming down on that every year moving forward as Gino goes back to school. And then 6.8 is the consideration of non-binding class size recommendations. In the past, I've always come to the board with recommendations on what the class sizes will be. In our contract that we just negotiated this year with Priya, they were also given the opportunity to give their feedback. So you will see my recommendations for pre-K through first grade is 17 through 23. Second through fifth grade is 23 to 28. And then 6th through 8th is 23 through 30. Now that is something that we look at all the time as an administrative team to kind of see where we are in those numbers. The only area that I'm concerned and looking very carefully is at Ridge Central. We are projecting second grade numbers to start the year at 28, 28, 27. And a lot can happen. You can have students transfer in, you can all of a sudden have a bunch transfer out. We had originally looked at first grade being a possibility where we could go down numbers, and all of a sudden we had 5 people show up. So those are things we look at constantly. The union gave me their recommendations, and they said the majority of the responses was K1 classes capped at 20, 2nd through 5th grade classes capped at 25, and 6th through 8 classes capped also at 25. In those scenarios, look, based on the numbers that we have currently, we would need an additional 3 teachers to start the year. Again, when we say non-binding class sizes, the board doesn't need to vote on it, just kind of needs to give, this is what we are looking at as the recommendation. And then again, they're not binding. If we go in a different direction, it's okay. But it is very good, not only for us as administration to have kind of a guidelines, but for the teachers to know as well.
So what if it's 1 over?
Then it's in the contract. It really spells out. We try to, if it's possible, like if someone comes in, like we try to see if we can move someone who hasn't started yet to another classroom, if that's possible. So if one class had, let's say 28, one had 26, try to even those out. And then there's really a process that we put together of how we would go through that. And again, my recommendation has been what we had, at least since I've been here. And when I looked back, it looked like it had been at least 4 or 5 years previously. And I think we all know that the smaller class sizes, usually the better, but we always have to balance that out with the resources, and we only have so many resources and what we can do with that.
So then it's going to be the 17 through.
That would be my recommendation if the board is okay with that being the non-binding. And
Well, I just think there has to be a level of flexibility because we have such an influx that come in late in the year, as well as students who leave. And so, you know, to balance it out, it has to be okay that possibly another class scoops up a student and it's not an issue. So I think leaving at least a little bit of a gap so that it has it, but we all know that smaller class sizes are always
Yeah,
better. And
yeah.
when you look at the numbers that are in there now. I mean, most of them are falling at the bottom end of all these spectrums that you have.
Yeah.
So leaving that cushion. I don't know that any class except for junior high is at 30, it appears, so I thought I saw 30 somewhere.
29% is at the top. Is that what you're
What are you
talking
saying?
about?
Mm-mm.
Oh, six,
yeah.
yeah, here. 6
Those,
through 8.
those are the
Yeah,
percentage of the.
6%
results
of
that they
the
want.
Oh, I
classes
see.
are at 30.
Those are the percentage of.
Oh, their
what?
input,
Yes,
okay,
Yep.
okay.
Mhm.
I thought I saw 30,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay. I looked at it just differently. So I noticed like down between pre-K to first grade.
Mhm.
We have the 4, it's more to the 4
Yeah.
classes, and then we start going down to 3 now. Do you feel that is it because the class sizes get bigger?
Yeah, so
Or Are we
kindergarten,
gonna need to worry that we're gonna have like that banner,
yeah, well, I guarantee you these pre-K and kindergartner numbers will go up. That's what we have so far for registration. So those always.
Oh,
Always
yeah,
go up.
because we always have to turn people away for pre-K, it's by a need
Yeah,
basis,
yeah, so
so.
those are the numbers that we currently have. We have always, when you see like the 4, that's because. Research does show the younger they are and the smaller class size they have, that has a much larger effect.
because I was just wondering if it was like, because I know that we had a time when. Was it? That you guys were like, and it was like up to your noses and students, are we looking at that trending coming or not? Are we?
Not right now, we look good at the junior high level.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, I mean, in general, because, as it goes, you have like
Mhm.
people who are at the lower end and now you have to shift them up.
yeah,
as-
my biggest concern in both buildings is definitely 2nd and 3rd grade. So, and that's the one we continuously look at, because you can always try to add a teacher right when the year starts. And I think it's better than not when you go over those numbers, but at the same time, it doesn't give them a lot of time. All of a sudden, parents thought they were in one class, and so
Right.
that's why we try to look at it as carefully as we can. So, right. A lot of post-it notes here.
Other 6.9 other,
Yeah, 6.9 other, just again, I thank the board. I know a lot of you have been coming out to a lot of our events. May for our administrative team and our teachers is a lot and a lot of really, really good stuff that we enjoy. Last week alone, we had band concert, art show, NJHS. I know I'm missing a couple other things we had, but we had a lot of different things at the buildings. What's that? The banquet. Anything else? Am I portrait of a learner? So just a lot of really, really good things. We just appreciate the support. Yeah, it's wonderful we get to do all of these things. And I know when I was a student, these are the things that I remembered. I didn't remember sitting in math class every day, but I do remember all those other things. So it's good that we can support that. So, all right. This brings us to presentations. We have 2 presentations tonight. We have Lisa Herod, who I have talked to you about before, and I'll let her introduce herself as much as she wants. And then after that, we're going to go into Megan's presentation, which they kind of go hand in hand in some general areas. We have been working with Lisa really almost all year, but really since like November, December, like really getting into it. And so I'm excited to hear what she's going to share with you. And I know she's going to be open for any questions that you have.
Yes, so nice to be here with you guys today. Thank you for asking me. So I did a summer before you, the initial conversations and considerations. What I thought would be good is to take you through kind of a walk of things we talked about and where we decided where the priorities were. So after a thorough review of the district, I wanted to better understand before I turn to the proposal more about Chicago Ridge, what it looks like, your population of students, to get an overall feel before looking at special education in general. A discussion was held with Dr. Thorns. We looked at priorities and a very strong commitment on behalf of not only your superintendent, but the administrators to find any areas that there was improvement that was, I guess, prime to be able to look at. And all of this was really a comprehensive review based on what is best for students and what is going to further student achievement. So the district strengths and celebrations were also discussed. I thought it was important to balance everything out. So anything that was special or a celebration to the district was noted, and we can build upon that if needed as well. A proposal was created. We looked at over 24 areas with the understanding that we are both signing up to look at ongoing effective communication and problem solving from start to finish. So I could have come in, I could have done a report for you, handed it over and said, okay, now it's yours. But in talking to the administrative staff, it worked better if we could problem solve as we went. And that seemed to be a very good strategy because of the commitment level of not only Dr. Thorns, but your entire administrative team and the teachers involved as well. So from there, interviews were conducted with representatives from each area of special education, staff members, specialists, met a lot of wonderful people with a lot of celebrations to be had, and also some of the concerns that we were looking at were lining up from both the administrators and the teaching staff. We identified priority areas through a comprehensive review and the information gathered. And we wanted to recreate a sustainable, these are the areas that we were looking at initially. Recreate a sustainable continuum of services for the students in our special education programs and provide them with access to the general education curriculum the best that we could. Increase communication between department staff and administrators. Increase collaboration between special education and general education staff members. Create opportunities for professional development and building the capacity of special education paraprofessionals to better work with the students that they were working directly with. And creating a true team teaching model with training that would replace the old co-taught model in some of the classrooms across the entire district. In looking at all of this, one of the things we said from the start is that to really implement true and effective sustainable change, it would be a 3-year process. But I will give all the credit in the world to not only the administrative team and the staff members. You guys hit the ground running. That's the best that I could explain it. So many conversations about sustainable change, every decision based on what is best for students. And that is definitely a highlight when we look at 24 areas that we are going to begin to tackle in a short period of time. Plans are underway to reflect on that. Ownership and collaboration has been of the highest quality, that commitment level. And again, the desire to make all decisions based on what is best for students. When you have that as your kind of guiding principle, that removes any bias, we're doing this for our building, not across the district. And that again was a celebration. And then the buy-in accountability to the process has been remarkable. So additional action planning and feedback, behavior management and de-escalation training for district staff was something that was gathered through the feedback, making sure that staff feel comfortable escalating situations and have that student back into the general ed classroom, special education classroom. Additional support for students with autism and strategies to help them be successful in a variety of environments across the school district as you move forward for creating a continuum of services. An entire rebuild of the district RTI and MTSS program to assist any student who is in need of intervention, has learning challenges, or enrichment. So you have decided as a district not only to look at the students who have challenges with learning, access to the curriculum, you're also on a journey to look at the students who need that enrichment as well. And the RTI MTSS, I know it's a bullet point, and all of these are bullet points, but the time and the conversations and the background work that goes into each of these is a phenomenal amount of time and problem solving. And I know Megan is going to talk about the district and the MTSS, and I think that you will be excited about what you hear about that and what it will yield for students. Initiate vertical articulation at all grade levels. Have staff talking about students that they've had this year that will move up, just to get a better understanding of who's coming to their classrooms and how they can better serve them. Reviewed all special education curriculum to align with state standards, and then increase the morale of departments and in buildings through communication and support by opening up some of the things that we saw on the interview about communication, timelines, things like that. We decided just to increase morale through that communication and that level of support being increased as well. I conducted an individualized education plan audit. So I asked for a variety of IEPs across the district. And I went through them looking at what would work against these being legally defensible. And some of the things just to highlight that we saw that I know there's training that will occur for staff. And I think as we've come through those trainings, and I've been involved in those trainings when I was a special educator as well, I think you feel more comfortable, you feel better about writing goals because it's kind of a checklist that helps things be automatic. So district goals written for the programs versus individual student needs. How do we flip that to look at, instead of this is the program they would be going into, this is what you need and you need, etc. So very individualized. There was a lot of 80% goal achievement. So when we're reporting progress throughout the IEPs, it was 80%, 80%. If I have a student who I've collected baseline data on that is at 50%, I'm already 30% higher in a year's time from where I should be. And maybe that's not the best number for what they can obtain in a year's time. Goals written could be aligned to a specific program in the district. We've talked about that a little bit, and making sure that when you're writing those goals, they are for a year's time. When you look at IEPs, and none of what I'm telling you is uncommon in any way in school districts that I have worked with, it's just a learning curve. And as we move past the pandemic, this is kind of what other districts, including my own where I'm superintendent, we're just hitting the reset button on a couple of these areas. So making sure that they're aligned with the specific program that they are not, and making sure that it is what Caroline needs, except for to be successful. Reviewed placement considerations for the district blended pre-K and potential expansion of that program. And also just, again, the entire curriculum. When a student has learning challenges, when they're identified as special education, how can we offer them as many environments to be successful so we truly can make the decision on what is their least restrictive environment and that how they can be integrated into the general education classroom. Small group implementation with specific goals and targets, and progress reporting that is less subjective and based on data. For example, if I say, I'm going to use you to right in the front row with me, Caroline does a wonderful job in class. What does Caroline do that is so wonderful in class? That's what I want to know, so I can look at that as a celebration. Tell me that she is doing, that she has her letter sounds from A to F that we've been working on. Those specific things. When we're talking about feelings, feelings are very abstract. Instead of saying she does good, she does well, define that for me. I want to take all of that information, and I want to know that when she is with her peers in smaller than a group of 5, she excels with communication. That translates right back to her goals and objectives. Removing specific program names and describing student skills needed. So for example, there's a program, Orton Gillingham, Wilson Reading, and they're very hands-on kinesthetic programs. Instead of naming those programs, moving to a hands-on sensory-based tactile program. So removing the specific names. And the reason for that is if you have a student who moves to my district and I open that up, I want to know what they were really working on, not the program name, because it might not be beneficial for us to obtain that, but what were the student skills that we needed to remediate. Creating a plan to address specific minutes needed to address these goals and objectives, and making sure that they were, again, based on what the individual student needed versus the program. We talked about the feeling words without the explanation of student need, and placing pertinent information in present levels of academic performance. The ability for any one of us to look at that present level of a student and know exactly how they are coming to the class, that would give me information that I would need to feel successful working with them. And I know this has been an area that you have made a tremendous amount of progress with the state being involved and LRE as well. So everything is lining up and going hand in hand with the data that's been reported in a variety of multiple areas. Are you pretty good?
Sorry, I'm trying to silent sneeze. I thought I did a pretty good job.
So here's what we started looking at now that we've identified these areas and moving from just a report of information to let's be hands-on, minds-on, let's problem solve and take action. All the areas highlighted for immediate change are being addressed, and there's an ongoing back and forth sharing of data. The administrators, I know the teachers, everybody will be involved as these programs continue to grow, change, expand, etc. Utilization of support staff in the building being streamlined, and then a process for documenting when is support needed so that it can be reviewed to make sure that where the support is needed is where the available staff can work with those students. A research-based curriculum is being implemented in both general education and special education classrooms. And I know, Megan, you're going to talk a little bit more about that. And the continuum is being discussed and district staffing patterns have been reviewed. So the continuum is from offering limited things to a variety of things where when you're problem solving for students, they will have areas within the general education classroom, et cetera, that we can start to consider and then move on from there if it needs to be more restrictive. And again, that's a journey. Every year, your numbers and your projections will change, and you can get a good idea for about a 3-year feel. But I know that you're sitting down, you're looking at what students are already here, planning for any students that may move in, move out. And so this will be very fluid, the continuum, but the success and the progress that has happened to open up that continuum has been phenomenal, and the discussions that have been had. And then, as Megan will report on later, MTSS or intervention options with clear procedures that are being built to align with the district vision and mission that, again, you are committed to working with, and plans are in place even stronger than ever. Any student who could have a learning challenge or in need of enrichment within the district boundaries. A 3-year professional development plan is being built for all district staff members. That was built on not only meetings that administrators have had, but the survey data and defining very specialized areas. I know there's already plans in place for some of these things. And so that'll be a nice 3-year plan to be stair-stepped to start from foundational to more advanced as the teachers grow or need more information. Procedures are being outlined and placed in writing for all staff members to understand the changes, the rationale for the changes, and then be able to answer any questions. Do you have a question?
I did.
Okay.
Who did the survey go out to?
So it was interviews and then follow-up surveys based on, Megan, the district, correct?
Yes, we sent a district survey out to all staff that they completed, probably
It's
in
February, beginning of February.
All staff certified, non-paras, yeah, everything.
And the great part about how the interviews were set up is there was a great mix of staff members as well. And so we got a good feel for not only the programs, but staff in specialized areas, et cetera. And they were very specific and things aligned about the training that they would like to receive. So that's always a celebration as well to say, here's where we are, here's where we'd like to be. And everything fits together to show where and what is needed. Team teaching opportunities for staff will be implemented. There will be coaching, there will be training, there will be support. This will be a process from to finish that all staff will feel comfortable, as the idea of co-teaching is kind of moved to more of a true team teaching with, again, that question, answer availability, and greater engagement of students within classrooms. And then creating a communication plan that has been addressed and will be implemented, and data will be utilized to make decisions based on student challenges and also success. So the guiding principles that the administrative team has decided on, and just what has kind of carried them through the comprehensive review process, which it's not only a very ambitious process, but the way that they have taken it and implemented change speaks, again, I can't say it enough, highly to the team of people all around that you have in the district that says, yes, let's talk about this, let's get moving, and let's take care of this together. All of that translates to more success for your students. And that's something that, as you look here, not only are they making that commitment to have students and staff members have what they need, you can see the sustainability of that systemically, meaning not just Lisa came in 2022, 23, and now we're moving away from this. This is a long-term commitment to truly change to what is best for students. And you can see vision, buy-in, communication, increased expectations, accountability, support, and celebrations are all those foundational principles that are being talked about and guided everyone as they moved into action. Megan?
I'm
Any
I'm sure we
questions
have
for-
some questions, so I will
Sure.
open it up to that.
Well, I have several,
Okay,
but again, they might have to put a pin in them until Megan speaks, because a lot of them are curricular.
okay.
So you may not be able to answer them. And so I've spoken with Megan before about curricular needs. And so you had talked about vertical articulation as well as curriculum accessible to all, or the alignment. And so the top tier of this, obviously this is a new position, you're doing this. When we had spoken before, I talked about accessibility of curricular, the Common Core focuses being accessible to all grade levels. And so I don't know where you're at in that process, because I can't see streamlining it to make the SPED curriculum align to that when we don't even know what we're doing here.
Mhm.
And when I had spoken with you, the teachers who were at our roundtable did not know how to access the Common Core goals that we're focusing on for grade level. So I have a lot of concerns about accomplishing the goal that you have set up, which is absolutely necessary to create a least restrictive environment for students on IEPs, but SPED teachers cannot do it if it's not set up there. So I guess this is a two-tiered kind of question.
So I do want to celebrate some things of my takeaways, and I can tell you there's probably staff all over this district who have said Megan keeps bringing up the conversation that took place at the status of the district. And I keep referencing these teachers at this table that were veteran teachers that had shared the black hole of the Google Drive and curriculum. And so from that conversation, just some celebrations that we have is our new teachers and our team leaders have helped me build a one-stop shop website with
Okay.
all of our curriculum resources for each grade level, each content area that align to the standards are on there, our essential standards that our staff work so hard to establish on there. The resources are listed on there. We also built one for technology to say these are the district supported resources. So that is that core foundation of clearly defining what are the district resources that we are asking all and ensuring that all of our staff are using across our eventually pre-K through 8th grade. All new things are being added to that. So that's that first step that was of great concern in
Yeah.
January or December when we met from that.
Could have been any day, but I remember it being a big
Yes,
conversation.
And then just some other celebrations are just a really good opportunity. We're meeting with our special education building facilitators. There's one from each building to talk about the curricular needs within that special ed department to make sure that not only are we ensuring the alignment from the general education tier 1 core curriculum and what can they be using in their special education pullout and instructional rooms, but then are there additional supports that are needed based on the students' specific needs and learning targets as well. So yes, and we are also supporting that conversation with our staff through a status of the district in May. And then as an administrative team, we've talked about the importance of ensuring that our teachers are using the resources that we're implementing or that we have in the district currently, and then also leaning back to those assessments that are in that so we can start gathering common assessment data with the resources that are currently living on our shelves in our departments.
Well, and I mean, to have true vertical alignment, if we are not having every class, every first grade do the same goals, whether it's lawn or central, then we're not going to have vertical alignment.
Yep.
So, you know, to then ultimately transfer that to a viable SPED curriculum where whether it's you're just pulling out or adapting it.
Yep.
I think that this is crucial
Yep.
to help with this. So then I guess off of that, the way that these accommodations and classroom things are implemented, you talked about the co-teaching as opposed to team teaching. Now, if I'm correct, we don't have, except in the junior high, full co-taught classes as much as push in and pull out. And that's very difficult to make a really great co-teaching. So I'm interested how that's gonna transition. Now in the junior high, I think there are fantastic co-taught classes where the teacher is in there the entire time, where it's not as, oh, so-and-so is in here for part of the day or pulling kids out. So I'm very interested to see how that looks with when you have push in and pull out services, but the push in more so because everyone knows to build a good team teaching, there has to be a relationship. And to do that, there has to be someone in there all the time. And if Miss Sally only comes in 2 days a week and she's only talking to 6 kids, it's never going to be a true relationship. So I'm curious about that. I have not seen push and pull out services be super successful. So I'm interested to see the training that is going to go on and how it's going to work. I would love to be able to peruse what this intranet for just the building looks like, because that was my biggest thing. The training for support with autism, as well as behaviorals. Who is that for? Is that just for the SPED staff, or is that for, regular ed staff who may be in more need of it if they're in a situation where they don't have supports in the classroom?
Yeah, we think that, and Carrie, you can talk to it too, but I think we're all in agreement.
Increased prevalence of students with executive function issues, autism spectrum and developmental delays would be something that we'd be looking at to all staff, so that they're really able to kind of look at their class environments and modify them to meet.
So then this is then my tiered question off of this. If you are a teacher in a room and you have a student who is having a, I guess, incident or a problem, and what does that teacher do then to support this student while supporting the 23 other students? And what would be the tiers of action? Is it a phone call down to the office? Is it, if you don't have a paraprofessional in there or someone else to be concerned about all the kids? That is one of my questions. Then how is that implemented in the classroom? I mean, I know, obviously in people who go to school to become special education teachers often do certain types of training, and and maybe in a more severe, profound setting, we're looking at something different. But even a student who's struggling in in the least restrictive environment, I'm curious how that's implemented without alienating the student, but also caring for the other students around.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I could just comment to on the collaboration with the Illinois Elevated Special Educators Network. That really has a broader implication too. They've been able to provide assistance and training to all of our staff on kind of that concept of universal design for learning, and that's really looking at how we differentiate for all the students. And we also have, and at least we'll kind of point out, there's between our content area specialists, but then our special educators and related service providers. Those being the folks we can kind of lean on for, well, how do we provide an accommodation for the student? Occupational therapists have great ideas for supporting some of those centering in the classroom, so consulting with them.
Well, I know the low tech type of things are like the silent cues or like little systems. I get that. I guess I was thinking in more of a larger disciplinary situation.
And I think when you look at, I can speak to the training for the team teaching because I've done that for the past 25 years. And my look at that is I am less concerned about the models than I am the building blocks of effective, not only the behavior management modification, true modification, which goes to that first thing you were saying about the other students in the classroom, but also access to the curriculum, those research-based strategies. And now more than ever in 2023, those engagement strategies to keep the students frequently moving, small groups, et cetera, so that some of those behaviors that may have been prevalent in more of a traditional type classroom aren't as prevalent anymore, because there's a lot of instructional strategies that are geared towards the engagement of the students.
That's perfect. Thank you. I think I wrote like 3 pages, but it's all convoluted because I have 22 tabs open in my head as well. The present level of performance, you talked about people using a lot of feeling words as opposed to things that would transfer into data for goals, which is so essential in IEPs and tracking them. So are these feeling words coming in when teachers respond to the present level of performance, or are these feeling words being put into the goals and the things that you reviewed?
So in most cases, and this isn't something that is just, I guess, unique to your district, because I do a lot of trainings in this area, a lot of audit. And it's wanting to do what's best and give a good picture of how they are, how they present. And so the intention is very, very good, but that where we fall short is the actual non-subjective data and removing all the bias about it. I want to know if a student is frustrated, what that looks like, and for you to tell me, here are 3 things that happen in the classroom presently, so that I can run 3 different interventions, and then they will come into the goals to help that student be successful.
But these, it's not being written in the goals, it's more what the teachers are indicating is going on in the classroom.
Progress recording. those
Okay,
types of
And that
things.
could be easily cleared by a pretty general present level performance that all teachers use that have like certain elements that they should be focusing on.
So in the training, what you'll see is it's almost a kind of data set that I built that says who, what, where, when, why, your standards, scores, et cetera, how they present, so that if
What
we were looking
accommodations
at-
they're
yes,
using, okay.
If we were looking at Dr. Thorne's, I would be able to give you a very good data-based picture rather than to say Adam is a phenomenal student, he falls short with communication. I'm trying to come up with
Don't
a.
throw that one out there.
Right, right. So I'm strictly made up, right? But that is something coupled with the data to give the teachers an overall year-to-year look at, here's where we started. And then the goals can say, we're starting at 30%, but we feel strongly that this student will be at 75% by the end of the year, which is huge growth in that one goal or objective area.
So then another question I had was about the pre-K program that is now kind of the blended learning. I have noticed all of my children were in the pre-K program, so I have some level of familiarity with it. A lot of times students who are at risk or targeted need are often EL. And so when we have the EL world and the SPED world all combining, I'm wondering how all of these students' needs are going to be serviced in that blended environment.
So she's actually taken the lead on team teaching for next year and training, support, access. And I think that will create a ripple effect throughout for everybody.
Okay.
It's a phenomenal, ambitious, wonderful goal that you have taken on. And I do think a year from now, it will yield great benefits for all students involved in it.
And to answer the pre-K blended specifically, as we've looked to kind of make these changes and look what the support is going to be in there, I've talked to, I think we're up to like 14 different districts around to see what they've gone. And also 126 had one that I thought was one of the more interesting. They have 2 paras in every room. One is specifically like focused on those with IEPs and one is specifically focused on those with EL. So that's something we're looking at, kind of what kind of support we're going to have in there, but that was one that I thought was very interesting compared to what I had heard from the others.
I feel like it's very difficult when you have such a high EL population to identify when there is, you know, a need for an individualized education plan as opposed to that there's a language barrier, you know, so I find that kind of becomes difficult. So I was curious because I do in the past, like, you know, my kids had speech issues, which is a specialized education. But there was also students who had language barriers. And so how, if we're really going to incorporate this more, how it's going to really suit the needs of those early learners who need it.
And I think even moving forward through the grade levels, the beautiful thing about team teaching when it's built to be sustainable is it reaches all of the students. It's not that you were in intervention, you didn't qualify for special education. Now I have 2 specialists who are committed to making sure the students know they can go to both of us at any time and creating that classroom community where if you need assistance, you not only feel comfortable, but we're always looking for the students who do need assistance that may be due to language barrier or special needs, et cetera.
Well, there's so many
Yeah.
kids who need help of an intervention. And I, on a personal note, I have coached with a person in the room for almost 20 years. So I have a solid understanding of it. That's why I have the push-in model is I'm curious to see it be very successful. I know it can be. I have someone who's with me all day. So I feel like there is no curriculum teacher / SPED teacher. We're both doing it. But that takes years to develop. And so, especially for someone to learn the content, you know, of the class as well.
You said something earlier, it's that relationship piece,
Yes.
and that's something we talked about.
And trusting each other for
extensively.
you to teach.
Yes.
And so good training. And from what it sounds like, it's going to be fantastic. I am almost done with my questions. Okay. It's my first day as president, really. So I had to like bring my
This is
big game.
Michael Adam, I sign up for this, we're good,
Okay.
we have a phenomenal support staff, teachers, et cetera.
The last thing you talked about, just SPED curriculum. And obviously if a student is in the least restrictive environment and they're in what we will call the regular education classroom. Then sped curriculum, I'm assuming, is something different because we're just adapting the present curriculum. Sped
Absolutely.
curriculum would then be the self-contained
The more
classrooms.
direct, yes.
Okay, and so we're talking about consistently, I'm assuming, looking at what is the state standards and trying to develop, implement them so they could still be on track, so to speak,
With the
with
understanding.
looking at their needs
Yes,
too.
with the understanding that if I'm in a traditional seventh grade classroom and there are 32 pieces of information that I need to master to be able to move on, what are the most important aligned with those standards that if students can not only learn and be able to tell facts, truly bring to mastery, transfer, and understanding, I can stop any failure cycle and continue to move on because I have teachers and a curriculum that says this is what's going to be best and has to be from level to level mastered. And so we expose them to all 32, 34, but hold them accountable for the ones that
Well,
provide.
the essential skills, the ones that,
Absolutely.
you know, in understanding by design, there
Yes.
are the essential things.
Yes, and the academic vocabulary
Yeah.
that builds on.
That will transfer vertically. I'm done asking questions, but thank you guys.
Who else?
I have some.
Okay.
You had mentioned that there was the consistency of about 80% for goals. Did you find that the goals themselves were repetitive?
So we did have some concerns and it's, whenever you do an audit like this, again, I can tell you that Chicago Ridge doesn't stand out from the other districts that I go through, including my own when I first got there as well. It was 80%, which is a number that for years we were told in education to go with. 80% is a good mastery level. And now we're saying, but if your baseline data tells you that's not possible, you need to create an individualized goal. And then in the goals and objectives, I think they did a very good job of wrapping what the student would need. Sometimes in the goals, it falls short of what exactly does that look like? And how do I get from step A through step B through the objectives? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And were those objectives measurable?
That is something that there is a training that will be scheduled, a 2-part training that we will go in and talk to the teachers about. Here's where we started, here's where you want to be. And what I found through doing that training, including in some area districts, is you feel better about it because that pressure's taken off and it becomes automatic to check, do I have all of those pieces in place, the building blocks? So there will be, it's called writing measurable goals and objectives.
And that I had spoken specifically to Adam about that. So that is going to be the case manager's role with the feedback from the teachers, and then there'll be training for them.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Did I miss anything?
The lead case managers and also those related service providers.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I hope the case manager isn't writing on behalf of related services.
No, but I
No.
know, because those are different goals, but I meant like the academic goals.
Oh.
I'm not, no, not like
It's like,
the
oh,
social
yeah,
work
but-
goals
yeah.
or whatever, but no, the academic goals and that, I mean, that's what I was asking. or
Okay.
relax.
It'll be thorough, and then with that comes the ability at any time to say, I wrote these goals, Lisa, can you look over them to make sure with your set of eyes and your background, they are measurable and that it's the overall goal and each objective can be built on the success for the student.
And so with the case managers, I'm hoping that the related services
Yes.
people will also have that training.
I can tell you tremendous conversations come from social work, psychologists, speech therapists, etc.
Okay, my last question is, how are we determining eligibility for EL kids? Yeah, are they tested in their native language?
And that's kind of determined on a case by case basis, but in a lot of cases, and especially this year, I think in the last 2, really, we've done more bilingual evaluations than ever before, to really kind of tease out, is it a second acquisition
Right,
issue or?
right.
is it true?
It's always very frustrating when students whose language is not English, that they become sped, but they're why, you know, it's.
Well, and it
it's-
doesn't
it's-
service their needs if it's a
No, it
language
has nothing
barrier.
to do with having a learning deficit. It's just a language barrier. So, okay.
And I think as your MTS, that RTI program gets built, those are some naturally occurring positive consequences that come out of a very strong foundational program as well, coupled with the team teaching is different sets of eyes looking for different scenarios that would help in that decision-making process.
Any other questions for Lisa?
Just like you say, numbers make you, I'm like,
All right, we are gonna move on to the second part of the presentation with Megan Mathago.
Okay, so I'm excited to, through Lisa's presentation, there were, bullet points, throughout, at least one on each of her slides that I will reference and share the work that has been started, based on conversations with Lisa and the administrative team in collaboration. And the title of this is really Building and Supporting a Foundation for a Multi-Tiered System of Supports, often referred to as MTSS, which you might have seen in Lisa's presentation. And I think this is important to understand that this is the beginning work of a lot of work, but it is truly the foundation in order for us to build this system of support within the district and start with a clear slate and try to, instead of trying to fix or change what we currently had going on in the district. So first of all, I just want to refer to what MTSS or multi-tiered system of support, in case we're a numbers person and maybe not an MTSS person. So this is just a very specific definition about MTSS. I think it's important that you understand that it is now identifying students with academic, behavioral, and social emotional strengths and challenges, and then provide the differentiated support based on their needs. And Lisa had referenced a few of that, but in historical past practices, you might have heard the word or acronym response to intervention, or RTI, which really leaned more towards just the academics. And we do have an RTI system in place currently, but we want to make sure that we're able to do all of these things and build an MTSS system. And the RTI would be embedded within that as we move through it. So I found this beautiful slide that talks about the 7 guiding principles or components for a strong MTSS. And even though it seems small work, it's really not. There's a lot that's embedded within each one of these. But I think it's important to know that as a district, we've been focusing very heavily on numbers 1 and 2, and we'll continue to focus on those. The number 1 is MTSS for all students. And we have really been focusing and setting goals in our vision as a leadership team and throughout the district, create a culture of all being all our students, not separating or labeling students based on specific needs or challenges that they might come into, but really creating that culture. So that has been a focus, and that will continue to be a focus, and not something that we can just say, check mark, we did it. It's something that's really important to us and really important to successful system as we move through. And then number 2 is leadership is vital. And that has really been our focus for our administrative team this year through MTSS, is making sure that our administrative team is really understanding what foundational systems and structures need to be in place first in order for us to build MTSS on top of it. So I can say to you, if we continue with the schedule and we continue with the systems and the structure we have in place, it's almost that whole analogy of putting a square peg in a round hole, or a round hole in a square hole, peg, all of that. So it just doesn't work. We can't continue the system, the foundational system and foundation that we have, while trying to put something that is not the same on top of it. And so we have been working as an administrative team. We've been meeting. We started this conversation a year ago about how can we look at the schedule to create a supportive system for all of our students. And so that has been a work in progress and will continue to be work in progress. And everybody is doing their part on the administrative team to make sure that they're aware of what it takes, and then also brainstorming and meeting with different departments or different people to make sure that we can move forward with next steps. Number 3, I know it might be hard to read, so I will just read it. It says scientific, research-based core instruction and intervention are the foundations for success. And so this goes back to what was kind of talked about, is making sure that we do our due diligence to analyze the core resources that are being used in our classrooms in general education, ensure that they're being used, and circle back with that and making sure that that's a strong foundation. And that's been really what I've been working on this year, talking with the administrators, talking with team leaders, working with them, getting into classrooms, making my own observations, collaborating with administrators about, the resources that their teachers are using, so that we can make sure we have a strong understanding of what core is being used, and then being able to, again, build on top of that with interventions. And then also providing that foundation for that to take place, making sure that our schedule allows for the core instructional time, but then also interventions to be done and taking place at the same time. And then number 4, it says instructionally relevant, valid, and reliable assessments are critical for providing proactive, meaning ahead of time, and reactive support. So what can we do ahead of time to ensure that our students are getting what they need? All of our students. And then what also can we do if they didn't, if we just taught something, what else can we do to support them after the sentence? If they did not, if they got only 60% on an assessment, how can we create a foundation within our system to support those learners as well? There's a lot over here that I won't even refer to today because we're not there yet. It is so important that we focus on building that foundation of support and that structure and that system in order for us to then move forward. And we want to make sure that we're doing these 4 things really successfully. And we want to share out those with you today before we think about the next steps of this. So as Lisa had shared, we have been boots on the ground, really working and taking action towards building this foundation. And there are 3 things that I would like to share with you today that we have been doing as an administrative team through collaboration with Lisa as well as our team leaders in our building, in each one of our buildings. So the first one is just analyzing and looking into the consistency of academic times throughout the district. So pre-K through 8th grade, how much time are we spending on each of the academic areas currently, and really getting that input from the teachers to understand how much time their schedule is allotting for reading, for writing, for math, for science, for social studies at this time, so that we have a good understanding of where we can go with that. The second bullet here is to create a schedule that allows for staff time to support students through small group instruction. So right now our schedule is really bell to bell with the structure of the blocks of time that we have at elementary and junior high. So we want to really look at how can we look at our schedule differently to ensure that our staff has that window of time to be able to support the students. And then also looking at adapting positions that support tiered needs and making sure that we're maximizing the positions that we have to support all of our students and all of our learners in the realm of things. So hold on a second, because that was kind of like a shock there, but this was a wake me up. This is so the first component of this is really wrapped up for 1 and 2 of this, and this is looking at the schedule. And this is a suggested changes that we would like to look at as an administrative team. And I outlined it in red here to know that, again, this is a draft. If you've ever seen that on a document in red, it's a draft. Because this is the idea of what we would like to create in order to build that foundation of schedule for MTSS to build on top of it. So the way that this reads is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then the schedule times are off to the left-hand side here. There's blocks of 35 minutes. This is a template. It is a draft. It is the idea of what we're trying to accomplish. And so I'll talk more to that and the challenges and all of that. But first, I do want to bring to your attention some things that we're suggesting in order to support MTSS. The first one is right here, and it's centers. One of the things that we hear a lot through our illustrative math, the new math resource that we have adopted, is it is a very rigorous 60-minute instructional lesson, and that is how much time our teachers have. But there are also embedded centers that our teachers don't often have the time in their schedules to allow the students to play these center games or to work in collaborative partnerships to continue their thinking. So we would like to provide the staff with this center education time. And again, this is draft and just ideas of possibly giving this opportunity of having 35 minutes of time, 15 minutes of it being like a whole group number corner, which is a resource that we currently present to our students on Fact Fluency, and then breaking it up where there might be a writing center. There might be a math center, there might be a science experiment center, things that we're not finding the time within our day to actually do because of the quickness of the time, but then also the amount of content that we're having to get through to the students in that block of time. We incorporated kinder play centers. That's something that we've been hearing from our staff. Is just the need for our students in kindergarten, maybe even first grade, to have that creative play or opportunity and a play opportunity for them to engage with their peers. And also just options here, doesn't have to be set to this, but definitely options that we want to provide for the staff as we transition to something like this. And I do want to go back and say that through conversations with team leaders, and we collected this information about their instructional minutes that they currently have. We also, through that survey that was shared, that we had talked about, that was shared out with the staff in February, these are things that they were saying they needed more time for, that they wanted more centers. So we're taking both of that feedback that we've been hearing in the survey, along with their instructional minutes, and kind of creating a schedule that then aligns and supports not only what they're looking for, but then also what we need in order to support our students. The other suggestion here would be providing this, it's abbreviated as a WIN, often referred to as a win time or a what I need time. It is an intervention time. It is an opportunity for our teachers to pull small groups of students based on data that they've collected and reteach or backfill or even enrich our students so that they get that opportunity within the schedule. And if I can refer to Ridge Central, their MTSS team, when we met last, they really started to do a lot of work, and they've been implementing a what I need time 3 days a week for many of their grade levels in this capacity. For foundations at the kindergarten through third grade levels, and then comprehension for fourth and fifth, using data to pull small groups to reteach that information. And so I'm excited to see the outcome of that. They're currently MAP testing, and we're currently seeing great scores coming through. So we're hoping that we can see the success of that through evidence, and I can share that out with the board further. But what we are hearing is they're only able to do that within the limits of their schedule, and only some of them 2 days a week or 3 days a week. And so giving them this opportunity in the schedule will allow them that consistency and that regularity to possibly meet even more students, all students. Some things within the academic minutes that I'd like to definitely make sure that you're aware that are changes is currently in the schedule, we have 60 minutes of math, and then we have an additional 30 minutes of math. So it's a total of 90 minutes. Including our illustrative math instruction and our number corner instruction. With this proposed time to allow us to have more centers and more small group, we would look for that core instructional math time where it's direct instruction and more teacher-led or more specific to a resource to change from 90 minutes to 70 minutes. However, I want you to understand that we would still be incorporating some of that math instruction through centers and some of that math support through an intervention eventually. And then also the ELA block. Right now, we have really varying times, kindergarten through fifth grade, of some teachers spending up to 120 minutes on ELA, which would include reading, writing, word study, and some doing 90 minutes. And so what we're hoping to be able to do is really hone in on a 90-minute, again, core block that's really structured for them on what content they're teaching during that time, but then allow them to use this small group instruction or this center time to do some of more of that engaging and further engagement with hands-on activities, play-based, possibly visuals, and reteaching through small group instruction as well. The benefits to this is teachers will actually have that small group instruction, and as if you remember some of the bullets from Lisa's presentation did say, in order for us to move forward and support all of our students, that is something that we need to include in our schedule and meet all of the students' needs. Also in collaboration with our EL department and Caroline, we have determined that this would also be when our students who need 70 minutes of pull-out instruction would be pulled, so that they are not missing core instruction or a special or science and social studies. So our EL newcomers next year with our program changes, those are students who've been in the United States for 1 to 2 years. And that would allow them not to miss the core, but this would be a core plus more. So they would then still get the academic instruction of what they need for their grade level understanding and learning, but then they would get their language intensive instruction during 70 minutes where they're not missing any of that core academics. And then the centers would allow students to engage in a variety of activities throughout different modes of instruction, so writing, math, et cetera, et cetera. What I didn't put on here, but I do have a lengthy list of, are the negatives or the challenges that this then obviously does, bring to my attention. Obviously, one, like I had mentioned, this is a template. It looks really pretty. But when we start doing this template for every grade level, it doesn't always match up. Sometimes we've got a random 15 minutes here or a random 5 minutes there due to lunch schedules and things like that. So our elementary buildings have been working very closely, and Leanne has also been working very hard to get a template drafted for each grade level to see really what is the possible challenges that we would have when it came to, having these 2 times back to back. Would we be able to have one early and one in the later part of the day, especially with specials and transitions and things like that. Also, this is a bell-to-bell schedule. If you've ever been in education or if you have children, you know that the time doesn't always work out the way that we had hoped. If the day starts at 8:20 and it ends at 2:50, but that doesn't allow, you won't see on here transitions to and from specials, you won't see bathroom breaks, you won't even see movement breaks. But definitely our philosophy has always been in our buildings that if kids need movement, we hope that our teachers are responsive to that and they take a break, whether it's in the middle of an ELA class or if it's in the middle of a math class, and get those kids up and moving so that we're responding to the students' needs. And also bathroom breaks are not in here, but we do know that students need to go to the bathroom. And so we are understanding of that. And know that come out of some of these instructional minutes, but we feel when we're giving the more clear defined minutes, then the teachers are going to be more, on target with what is my focus for this time and how can I maximize that time and be more efficient and effective with it. And then of course, the last challenge that I'll mention is change. Change is a challenge or can be a challenge. And this is new and it is different. And it is something that we do as an administrative team know that it is different. These things like interventions can cause or small group instruction. Those are hype words that sometimes we get a little worried about. Like, what are the resources we're going to use? How are we going to determine the kids? How are we going to implement it? But again, Grade Central transitioned into this win time through team leader support and collaboration within their teams, and then a staff meeting that said, here's how we're doing it. And their MTSS team, which I know is Allison is a part of, Katie and Emily obviously as administrators are a part of, but then they have Molly Kaptursky and Barb Jemba, Sarah Cummings. They created this resource that are binders that are lesson after lesson that the teachers literally just have to go through. And they, again, hopefully we'll see great success with this spring MAP scores so that we can see the implementation of that. So that is the suggested elementary schedule at this time. And I'm going to continue on even though
I just have a question. So are you looking, you're saying you have some people who are doing this. So are you looking to this, like go all elementary, the whole thing? Or are you looking to try to do it with grade level implementation or just like, it's like go time?
it's go time.
How can so many levels have music at the same time?
No, so this is just
Or
one
like-
grade level.
Okay, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, like, I don't understand, like,
Yeah.
as far as art teachers, like, like, that's what I was curious about. There's going to be some level, the timing would be the same, but where it's in order on the schedule will vary.
Yes, and I started to do a template for each grade level, and through that, you'll see that this win time is not gonna be the same for every student, so that we can have reading intervention students that are getting pulled out for reading support also pulled during this time, so that they're not also missing their core, and they're not missing science and social studies, so they're gonna get pulled during this time. So what we've done and what we want to be able to do is, this might be fifth grade's template, but then fourth grade's win time might be here, and third grades might be here, and kindergartens might be here, and so it's going to change so that they can then pull the students at different times, and then allow them not to miss the core instruction, which is one of our main goals with this.
But generally speaking, teachers kind of have a schedule already where everyone's, you know, depending on where their specials are, because those are pretty standard. Most people do their things in the same order right now. So it would just be streamlining everyone to do math at the same time in first grade.
Correct. Well, we do at all the elementary buildings, since I've been here at least, we have provided them with the ELA, which is the reading and the math blocks of time. So those are almost like your untouchables.
Okay.
But then with teachers doing science and social studies at different times, or maybe they were doing writing, we were pulling students for reading intervention, and some kids were missing writing, and some kids were missing science, and some kids might have been, because the schedule didn't allow, missing like the second half of ELA. Which we want to try to avoid any student, because again, we've gotten kids, and I over my years as a principal, and then of course, even just being in the building this year, where the student gets pulled from science and the kid's like, I don't, because they are missing an experiment. So we want to try to avoid that.
I
And then,
like that.
Thank you,
Because that was very good.
That was very
good.
You've been practicing all week.
he was very bummed. He was very bummed as he walked into the room. And not because what he didn't value what he was going into, but he was just at the time in the zone of what the instruction was and the engagement of what he was with, with his peers. And then he felt like he was missing out.
Can I ask a question about the assessments before you move on?
Of course.
To the junior high,
Yeah.
because I think this is more of a grammar school.
Yep.
So, you said about assessments to deliver data to inform the instruction. Who's gonna create these assessments, I guess, and then I'm assuming it's gonna be linked to this new curriculum, like not new, but whatever, but then how is that data going to be used and how often are they gonna be assessed?
So if I can speak to what is currently happening, K3 at Ridge Central, they're using Foundations, which is how we are going to roll it out next year with all teachers. They use Foundations. It's a core phonics instruction. With each unit, there is an assessment at the end of it. It is not an intervention at that time. But what we have been doing is, or what the Ridge Central staff have been doing, is looking at that data and looking at the students who have fallen below like a passing level of that, or where they want. And they've been pulling after every unit, they've been pulling that group of students into these small groups and reteaching those lessons through this resource that the MTSS team has created. So that is an assessment directly created from, or to correct directly from the Foundations resource.
Foundations is English?
It is word study, it's
Yeah.
phonics, so yes, it's
Well, math is our deficit, right? And so that's where I'm curious, like, what are the math assessments? And I mean, like, I feel like people do formative assessments, people do the summative, but like, if people don't know how to process the data and then use it to inform teaching, I'm curious how that comes in. That sounds good, like the Foundations,
Yeah.
because it is part of this program that we're paying for, so.
Correct,
But
yeah.
I'm curious, like, our specific need in our district is math.
Yeah, so we do through the illustrative math resource that we've
I
adopted.
know we adopted new stuff, so.
Yeah. They do have exit slips, which would be your daily formative assessment that could be used, but more likely we would be looking at more of the chapter or the unit assessment. And again, cutting off that line to say, okay, these are the students that did not grasp this information. And so I'm going to start pulling them for my reteach at that point. And we really want to, as I had said, we want to do this the right way. We don't want to do it the wrong way. So we want to make sure that we're doing something that is currently used in the district, that our teachers have the knowledge of implementation, and then support through they're already implementing the assessments.
Okay.
So then as an administrative team, we talked about like data spreadsheets and having that collected in a common area. So, and we have them for Foundations already. And then we can then support with team time of looking at, okay, let's look at these kids across. Why are they all getting
Okay.
on this chapter, teachers, unit 1 or chapter 1, math assessment, why do they all get 6, 7, and 8 wrong? Oh, because it's talking about aids for sports. And there's a, mathematical thing that their brain has to do and they're not doing it yet. So then how can we then go back and teach that differently? Whole group, if we have such a number, but then, these kids, just this pocket of students.
I just don't like to over assess. We do so much assessing.
Yeah,
And if we're gonna assess, I'd like to know that the data is gonna be processed. And it's not gonna be overwhelming for the teachers just to assess, like that the data is going to be actually used.
Yep.
It's gonna lead to something.
It's gonna
not
lead
just
to something,
mental
like we're not just giving
perspective.
this assessment and then like, okay, moving on. So
Yeah.
that was my,
and
questions.
and the district is using math testing already, but that's more of our benchmark. So
Yeah.
that's more to see that's growth from time term to term. So we test 3 times a year, but we want more immediate data and we want to be able to be responsive to that immediate data. So having those classroom assessments, and that's where it's really important for us as an administrative team, we talked about this, ensuring that our teachers are using the district provided resource assessments so that they are common. So we have TCI science for transitioning to TCI social studies. We want our teachers to be using those common assessments that are already embedded for us to start before making changes to those, so that we can all lean on the same assessment, apples to apples, and see how our students are doing, and then be able to have conversations about why it successes and why is it our students not understanding this.
well, and just point of just because I'm a teacher, academic freedom is so important in that how Susie implements an apple is different than how Kelly does, but I think that that's what makes teachers special and kids remember them, how they do the lessons, and that's not being pigeonholed here.
Correct. So
It's not that everyone has to do lesson 1 in TCI, you can implement it. We're still allowing teachers to have their own flair and personality and glitter or whatever.
exactly. So the autonomy of how they teach it is not something that we would be working, too much to.
Yeah, but that's what kids remember. I mean, 20 years from now, they might know those skills, but they're gonna remember when their teacher talked about their trip and showed slides and then
Exactly.
incorporated into a social studies lesson.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
When you say you do the small groups, where's the average size of those, and where do those kids go?
So
Teacher,
and some of the students, so when we talk about like EL newcomer small group, that's a pull out. That's gonna vary depending on the number of EL students that you have within your building. So, at a Ridge Central, there might be 9 students and they might not even be pulled all at the same time because they might be K5. Whereas at Ridge Lawn, we might have 40 students, but we might have 5 in kindergarten, 5 in first grade, maybe 10, and then they're broken up into 2 small groups. Ideally with our interventions that are pull out, like a reading interventionist, we want those to be like 4 students or 5 students. And based on time and schedule, that might get bumped up a little bit, but the smaller the group, we can then hone in on specific skills that we want to focus on. So if it's a decoding or a phonemic awareness, then we can pull all of those kids and then really hone in on that specifically. Within the classroom, though, it's going to depend on your students' data. So hopefully we can have ideally small groups of 5 to 6. But maybe there's a 7 that might be pushing it, or maybe it's 3 because we really want to just focus on targeting these specific skills with these 3 students. We're hoping that we can catch you up on those 3. Then you're going to go back and now maybe we're going to pull these 4. So it's going to really vary because we're going to be responsive with the data that's collected and the needs of the students.
So if you're looking at, like, for instance, we're looking at Ridge Lawn in the kindergarten, next year estimates are like 26. Chances are probably some would be pulled out, but even if you went with 5, you're talking about 5 small groups in a classroom, if they all stayed in the
Correct.
classroom.
Yeah. So
A nice.
I appreciate you saying that because when we talk specifically about this time here, and what we're talking about happening is we would have students that would get pulled out for reading intervention, and then we'd get EL newcomer students that would also be pulled out during that time. So if you had a class size of, let's say 20, and you were a kindergarten teacher, maybe you have 2 to 5 students that are EL newcomers that would be pulled, and we don't pull our students for kindergarten reading intervention until January, so that maybe is a bad example of a classroom grade level, but you get the gist.
Yeah.
Maybe in January, though maybe there's 4 or 5 students from that teacher's classroom that would also get pulled. So if I started with 20 and now I've got 10, that are getting pulled for these additional services. Now I have 10 students in front of me. And I can then hone in more specifically and do more small group. Now I maybe have 3 small groups of 3. Think about the impact that we can have on really honing in on targeted goals, or maybe I have 2 groups of 5 because all of these 5 kids really have that specific need. And the other 5, then we have different resources in centers, and opportunities through online technology, educational technology like Dreambox or Freckle that the district has so graciously purchased, or centers. We can have centers to be out there. We can have writing activities, hands-on, things like that. But yes, that is one of the benefits of having this time be the focus time of our only pull out opportunities, because it could minimize the number of students sitting in front of the teacher.
And so you can, in those special centers and things, I don't see at the grade school level, I didn't see it as much of taking the people who are excelling, whereas like at the junior high school, you have these kids that are pulled out where that's really nice that you could put these kids could have specialized because they're excelling in this time, and people who aren't, or just people who are just having something different and something that's finding something interesting that would help their skills that might not be, like you said, somebody's social studies type of thing, you know what I mean, that is more there, that they get.
Well, sometimes it's a challenge, I think, for educators to hit the top. To differentiate to a level, and this type of timing could allow homogeneous group, but also heterogeneous groups where kids who are higher leveled, or, like, I don't like to say higher leveled, but you know what I mean, who are not being challenged enough. So this could not just be a scoop up time, but
Yeah.
also
And
a
I
challenge.
think it's a great time though, to,
Yeah, they've met.
or the whole fact that you have, like you said, you have people who are in 2 different groups, and if you find that you have a classroom that these students are working well together, you can mix the higher and the together, because sometimes that helps each of them become better students,
Right, exactly. Yeah, thank you for bringing that point.
How will you prevent Win from becoming a possible
free-for-all.
catch-up time?
Oh, you've
or,
been absent for 4 days.
Yes, and I'm gonna check my emails, and not that they don't deserve to check their emails, because, I mean, they pile up by the end of the day, but how will we prevent that?
So, and that's a really good question. Even throughout the center time, right? We
Yeah.
want this to be engaging. We want them to be gleaning information from how their students engage in these different centers, right? And getting that behavioral data and observations and things like that. So I think it's important for us to support the staff with examples and structure, and suggestions on what is to be done during that time with clear expectations, which is part of our plan with communication and setting those ahead of time and communicating those to the staff. But also, this time specifically will be data will be collected. Spreadsheets will be there with the foundations, with the, with the math, whatever it is, that data will be discussed at team meetings. And our administrative team, has been aware of this and this, possible change with going into the team meetings and needing them to be there so that they can have that conversation and support the staff with, okay, this group is really struggling with, and then how can we support them, along with reading interventionists being a part of conversations, EL staff, education staff. So if we can look at each unit, and I know that's been happening already through the kind of pilot of this, where they're looking at their information at their team meetings, they're checking up with each other to say, hey, where are you at in unit 1? I just finished. Oh, I'm finishing. Okay, we've got the test coming up. How many students? And more of that conversation and communication will lean towards, well, we're on the same path, we're going, instead of just quiet, I'm just gonna close my door.
And will map testing have any weight, MTSS?
We'll use it as a component of data to triangulate that data to see if this, student is excelling in the classroom, but this shows here, or vice versa. Our data and map is showing, the student is really excelling, but their classroom performance has not been the same. And if the teacher has some concerns that are brought up, okay, let's look at all of the data and the trend data as well, not just this one component, but what was their assessment data prior to.
And then just because I'm nosy, Do we have our kids going back to back for specials like this, like music and PE or back to back?
So I can speak to Ridge Central because I'm familiar with that schedule, that was created in blocks like that. And I do know at times, and at Lawn too, I know that there have been times where that's been back to back, but depending on the schedule and the availability of the PE teacher or art teacher, there might have been one where they had one art in the morning and then they might have PE in the afternoon.
It doesn't really vary, because as we put the schedule, it looks real clean for the first 3 grade levels.
Yeah.
And after that, you're like, oh,
Yes,
so.
it's a plug and play.
They can only do PE so many and then like lunch.
I was just picturing a bunch of kindergarteners having a blast in the morning and then being spent by the end of the day.
But now they won't because they're gonna be in centers.
And actually studies show that there was a whole study on ADHD and students that giving them PE in the morning would make them focus more in class.
Yeah.
There was a huge study where schools were going to doing that in the morning.
But yes, that does happen.
Yeah.
Yes,
The testing results, like the math testing and stuff, did that affect what class the kids go into? If They, junior's going into 3rd grade, and he got a really high math grade and reading grade for the math test. Would like-minded test scorers be in the same classroom or just kind of all over the board?
it's pretty shared. Yeah, we don't cohort by level of learner. We don't have like a higher cohort. Like a higher group of students all going to teacher A, while there is a student group that needs. Now it's based on student need, of course. And if there is an additional staff member, so at the junior high, we have the co-taught classrooms at this point. So those students are cohorted based on their needs. But there are, other than that, shared classroom. Okay. So that was the elementary. The junior high is a block schedule. And so what we're suggesting is that we really look at the ELA and math blocks, which are currently set at 84 minutes. And talking and working with their teachers in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade ELA and math to take the second period, which would be the second 42 minutes, or maybe even the last 30 minutes of this 84-minute block, and working with the staff to incorporate small group instruction within that time. So that would be either reteaching or backfilling standards of students that might not have even gotten the grade up to the grade level standards mastered or level of proficiency, and then the possible enrichment. And I can say that the illustrative math, and then even our CPM, which our honors algebra class will be implementing next year, 8th grade. All of those lessons are written for 60 minutes. And so to have an 84-minute block, it does allow us to hopefully have at minimum 24 minutes to be able to host small group instruction, to be able to do the same things that we're talking about during that win time within the ELA and the math at this time.
And I look at it as an example of when we look at a math class, let's just say 7th grade math, the lesson takes 60, 65 minutes, then usually it's, all right, do these problems that would typically, when we were growing up, would be homework at home. So instead of just having it be the entire class, like you all work on this, now it's going to be much more specific as to what they're working on during that time. So they're still going to get, they should still get the same amount of core instruction time. It's just what they'll be doing with the additional minutes will change.
Well, and that would allow more questioning and support if reteaching needs to be done.
Yep.
And then the last suggestion is really looking at what is a current position at the junior high. It's currently unfilled and has been filled this entire year, and it's titled reading specialist. And again, like I said, it's unfortunately that it's been unfilled this entire year, but the suggestion would be to change just the title of that, really, from a reading specialist title to an intervention specialist. And the purpose of this is to cast a broader net, hopefully, to hopefully get that position filled, but then also maximize the supports that this person can do. When we pigeonhole it into a reading specialist, then they're only able to support students with reading. But if we change it to an intervention specialist, we kind of open up the doors a little bit more to be able to provide supports for our students at the junior high for both math and reading. And it would be very similar to the program that we're doing at our elementary with our reading interventionist. And we've been working very closely this year with them and making sure that the guidance and the information and the implementation of that is really strong this year. And we would be transitioning that to the junior high. So again, it's not any different than what has been done. It's just changing the title to hopefully maximize this position and kind of making this more of a power position for our district to support MTSS.
Is there any special education that goes along with this changing it? Like, what do they need to have?
No, so it is encouraged that they have the reading specialist degree or an intervention, but really no more than what we've been asking for in the past, but it's not mandatory. It doesn't, there's not a special endorsement, there's not a special certificate or licensure that would kind of require us to look at only one specific type
Well,
of
reading
candidate.
specialist though is specific.
It's encouraged,
degree,
but it's not mandatory.
But I don't know if there's a math specialist degree out there.
There's
is
math
there?
intervention, but I don't
Is
think
there-
there, no, to the point of endorsement.
No, I think only reading. So I had a lot of questions about this position because I don't know that it's been going or being implemented successfully. And of course, I'm not in your building. But I was concerned about how this person is going to track data for both and then implement, tiers of like help to
Sure.
students who need it, where it's going to take place, where this teacher is going to be housed in the building.
Yeah.
And how they're going to pull students. And then if there's no required education, what are they going to be training on?
Sure, so I think I can speak to all of those.
Okay.
They were gonna kick Jack out of his office.
Well,
actually.
Yeah.
so we're looking
And Adam wants
for
to stop
a
talking.
junior version of Megan
No.
to go into.
We're gonna cut Megan's office. into-
It's room 412, I can tell you that.
Okay.
Their room has been slotted because that's where the reading specialist was before at Finley. It is in the past schedule. There's a block of time that students were pulled. I talked with Julie and Jeff. We're encouraging, we're not gonna use that time. I'll be very transparent to say that time was in on-course, and we do not want to pull our students from on-course. So we have worked through this schedule to see if that second period of ELA and math, where the students would already be in small group instruction, they can be pulled, and we're looking at that schedule to ensure that could take place for all grade levels, which would allow the intervention specialist to pull like 7th graders for reading, 8th graders for math, and really it would be based on the data, and we would start looking at the students based on math data. And typically we would look in the spring data to see what our numbers are, what are the students that are falling below that 20th percentile, and get a cohort of students, and then look at this. Okay, it makes sense that these kids go during this time, and maybe math is a greater concern, so we're going to focus more on math for 6th grade, or maybe more on reading for 7th, or maybe we're going to pull a few 7th graders and a few 8th graders because they have the same skill deficit.
But these are skill based. It's not homework help. It is.
No, it is not. It is
what is the
very an
teacher-
intervention.
So can the teachers let the interventionist know, like so-and-so is struggling with this skill consistently, or is
So-
it only through math data?
So what we want to start is the math data, and from there, we would be able to provide additional information through additional assessments. So the district has resources for interventions and they're all in room 412. I'd be happy to show you all of them. Each
good.
one of those resources, usually comes with like a placement assessment or an assessment that you can use. There's a lot. There's a TSOFT, and there's all these different ones that we can then get more further information to determine that exact skill. We would then want it to be more of this intervention component. So we would want the student to sit in that intervention for up to possibly 12 weeks to ensure that we're really doing our due diligence to provide that intervention from start to finish. And then we would look to transition students out, and we hope that it would be fluid, that there aren't kids in there forever. If they have the ability to grow, we want them out and back in. But there are these students that maybe are concerned, and we would want to make sure that we do our due diligence to assess them, and that we have triangulated the data, meaning using more than one data point to say, yeah, there is a concern. And then after winter map testing, we want to relook at those cohorts of students and see the success and the growth, and reanalyze that information to see where we want to go from there. And we do have plenty of resources. We also have math interventions, Bridges intervention that is in the district. We also have a few other interventions that we can use for math. And you're right, math is definitely a great need for the district, but also something that we have not had in the past with interventionists to support math. So we want to make sure that we build our library of resources that we have for interventions for reading in math as well as we move forward with this
I like that you said that they can move out and that, possibly you're going to mirror it off of successful programs in the grammar school.
Mhm.
Because it is a new position and I don't know if it was being successfully implemented in the past, but the idea, not every kid takes the MAP test seriously unless you guys didn't know that. So they may have bombed out on a level there.
Yeah.
And it's like they go to this intervention and it's like they're being a not great kid because they don't need to be there. And then the kids who need to be there. So I like that
Yeah,
it's
and
going to be
we-
evaluated more closely than just you're in it for 12 weeks and that's it.
Exactly, and those assessments would be more targeted skill data for us. The map really kind of gives us that greater kind of level of the student understanding and learning. But this would be more of that intervention, so it would be plus the core, so it'd be beyond that. It would be there's something specifically needing to help,
So there's no math specialist right now at Finley?
not in the district at all. No, ma'am.
Just to clarify, you would be hoping that the intervention specialist at Finley could possibly do both?
That have the opportunity to do both. Within the schedule, looking at the data might have to, or looking at the schedule, we might have to say, okay, 7th grade ELA is greater of a need than math. And again, looking at that schedule specifically, but we would have that opportunity.
All right, this is just an overall question. Do we have an ebb and a flow where, like, where you see more of a need of reading at a certain point and then it starts to taper off? Or do you know what I'm saying? Like, is there a certain age or a certain like level where you see that there's a lot more that we have and then you have it tapering off, that where all you need is one intervention specialist here? Good. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because we have more than one reading specialist at our grade schools, correct?
We have, yep, 2 at Central and 3 at Long.
I mean, I know you do have more kids and stuff.
Well,
do
but-
you know what I'm saying?
And a
Like,
big part of it is the earlier you can get the intervention in,
Right,
the
okay.
larger impact you often have.
Okay.
We're hoping to have one and really work through that since we haven't had anybody and we haven't even gotten an applicant in the last year and a half.
Nobody in
So,
district wants to switch over, huh?
Not over the last year.
Maybe now with this new title.
That's gonna do it.
Darn right.
Sorry.
Good.
So there is, yes, great opportunities awaiting for us,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, all right, I answered a lot of your questions, but what other questions do you
That's it, we're
have?
done.
So as we transition and Megan, because you're gonna be doing summer school real quick in just a second, I wanted to thank Lisa for coming out.
Yeah,
And excuse Lisa. I know you have a long drive back.
thank you so
I'm not
much.
excusing the rest of you.
Thank you,
Yes,
thank you so much.
thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
And as Megan prepares to do her 30-second summation on summer school, I just wanted to thank not only our admin team, because even though I think Megan and Lisa did a great job presenting, there was a lot of work that went into it. And our staff too, when we talked about the staff surveys, we got some really good feedback and it's not always easy to hear honest feedback. But it was very honest and very raw, and that helps us move forward. And if people just pretend that, oh, it's fine, I don't want to change, that's when we get stuck. And so it's been nice to have that time to come together. And again, I'm sure with the changes, not everyone is always happy, but we have been listening and really trying to see what we think is going to be best for the students. So thank you for all your questions. And I know you guys all looked at this ahead of time, and I really do appreciate that. So Megan has 30 seconds before Kathy's 2-hour presentation on budgets.
Oh my God, Jeff has heat poisoning, and like, they're all gonna, die, like, he can't take it, he's got subsection.
I love this.
Is that what that right?
It's a racing strike.
Because you can do summer school, yeah.
Okay, 8.1, just an update on the 2023 summer school. It is brief to say that if recommendations went out last week to families if their child was recommended for summer school. Those were due on Friday the 5th. We are having our secretaries and our buildings reach out to those families that did not respond. And then we'll also continue on the list to ensure that we have our enrollment finalized by the end of this next week.
Thank you, Mrs. Notnagel.
And I have, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Kathy,
Gonna say, wait, can I ask one quick question of Lori? These all say Nancy's name, I can still sign them, right?
The cover sheets,
All these,
those are payroll. I'll have to reach out to Michelle and ask her to. have that.
I can still sign them though?
You can still
Okay,
sign them.
sorry, guys.
Presidents.
You good?
Okay, so only about half as long as Megan and Lisa here. No, just kidding. Okay, just really a couple of things I wanted to go over. 9.1 is our construction update. And I was thinking, I believe it was winter break already 6 months ago. We're talking warming blankets to prepare the ground at Ridge Lawn. And it's hard to believe that this is literally started 6 months ago. But there are walls everywhere, both at Ridge Lawn, and if you've had the opportunity to walk outside here by Finley, there is outside brick going up. The weather has been fantastic. There has been no delays. There is a slight concern with getting the steel over at Ridge Lawn. Manufacturing, issues like that. We're not in the panic stage, not even in the concern stage. But other than that, things have just been moving along quite rapidly. And so the next thing is 9.2 is our preliminary IMRF rate. And we talk about this every year at this time. IMRF is our pension plan for our non-certified employees. And unfortunately for calendar year 2024, it's actually going up. It's currently 4.77%, which means our contribution as a district for every dollar a non-certified staff earns, we contribute 4.77%. That is going up to 5.68%. And I was actually on the annual webinar today. And what they had said is those last 3 years, we have experiencing double-digit gains in the market. And for 2022, the market was down in their investments 12.9%. So unfortunately, we are seeing a slight increase, which approximately will cost the district about $17,000 for next year. And then the next item is a tentative amended budget. And I was actually hoping not to do a tentative amended budget because we really don't have to unless we meet some guidelines. And what had happened this year is it was great news that the construction started as early as possible, but we didn't anticipate it in our expenditures for capital expenditures. So that is the big line item or fund that you're going to see a lot of changes in. But overall, just some of the highlights of the amended budget. Our revenue is actually about $2 million higher than we budgeted. And we always budget very conservatively. And we have thus far this year received our $860,000 in our additional tier 1 funding. That has been added to the base, and last year it was the 860. We're always a little conservative, not very trusting of the state, so we don't put it in the budget. And then also again with the construction about $4 million is budgeted in the ESSER 3 grant. Well, when we submit expenditures, which we have because we started our project so early, we had about $700,000 in reimbursement from that grant. And then expenses, the expenses will actually be about $1.4 million higher, again, primarily for all of those construction costs. So overall, we are still in a very good financial position. As those construction costs and final salaries and everything come through the end of the year, we will amend that. And so on Thursday, if anybody wants to take a look at the budget, in your budget package, but anybody else, it'll be on display in the district office, and we will approve. I know, right? The grand opening, there'll be raffles. And yeah, we'll have giveaways, and then we'll ask the board to approve the final budget then at the June meeting.
I can probably do some money.
I love it.
9.4 other.
Yeah, no other. Thank you.
10.1.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 11.3, potential board action to approve the consolidated district plan for 23-24 school year.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Mrs. Grove. Aye. Mrs. Lebuzik.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 11.4, potential board action to approve payment to NWEA in the amount of $28,259 for map reading fluency and map growth grades K through 12.
I'll have the motion.
I'll second.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Lebuzik.
Aye.
Mrs. Grove. Aye. And Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 11.5, potential board action to approve payment to Consolidated Solutions in the amount of, I am not gonna be able to say this number, 216,534.00. Building additions for renovation work done at Ridgelawn School. 200,000, 1650, all right, we're good. I'm looking for an action.
I'll make the motion.
All right, there we go.
Second. Mrs. Lebuzik.
Aye.
Mrs. Grove. Aye. Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye,
I'm
But-
Matthew.
yeah, no. Potential board action to approve payment to Construction Solutions of Illinois in the amount of 100,063,121 for building additions, renovation work done at Ridge Central and Finley Junior High. It's not funny.
I have the motion on Mrs. Grove. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mrs. Grove. Aye. Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Lebuzik.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. I apologize also
I
for
love
my
it.
lack of
Keep it
reading
going.
numbers.
Keep it going.
All right, I apologize. I'm really not great at that. I can see that.
There's four.
I can do the 11,000, this is 232, but I got it now. Potential board action to approve payment to Helm Mechanical in the amount of $232,222.49 for HVAC work done at Ridge Central Finley Junior High School. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Lebuzik.
Aye.
Mrs. Grove. Aye. Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. Potential 11.8, potential board action to approve contract renewal and payment for Dialpath in the amount of $11,261.78 per month for 2024.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Mrs. Lebuzik.
Aye.
Mrs. Grove. Aye. Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 11.9, potential board action to change the May 23rd, 2023 study session to a special meeting.
And we're looking at doing that in case we have anyone to appoint to the board that night.
I'll make a motion.
Seconded.
Mrs. Grove. Aye. Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Lebuzik.
Aye.
And Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye, 11.10 other, 12.0 meeting reports,
Nothing.
12.1 other, 13.0 information, 13.1 other, 14.0 opportunity for visitors to speak. This one time,
Yep, this one time.
all right.
Yep.
15.0 president's prerogative. Everything I've already hit my buzz count for amount of words spoken, but I do want to apologize for not being able to say that first number. It was a lot of numbers at once, and I am not a numbers person, Tirza, that's why you were here, and of
I'm
course
glad to-
Kathy. I just appreciate everyone on the board voting me to be the president. I appreciate your faith in me. And I hope to do a really good job. I take it very seriously, so I appreciate the school. My children have had an amazing education here. Griffin is moving on to Richards, but I still have 3 more in the running, so I am really excited to be part of this, and I have been since I started the board, and I'm really excited to keep being a part of all this and to get to work with all of you. So thank you again. All right, so we're gonna adjourn the closed section, and now Adam
Yes,
has to
for the
read this bad
discussion of
boy.
the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with the Open Meetings Act as defined in the Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1. The discussion of collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees as defined in Section 2C2. The discussion of security procedures, school building safety and security, and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or a reasonably potential danger for the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public property as defined in section 2C8. And the discussion of meeting minutes of prior meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act as defined in section 2C21. For the purpose of review, approval, or release of such minutes, we will not be discussing student discipline or litigation during this meeting.
Looking for a motion.
Motion. I'll second. Thank you, Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Lavazza.
Aye.
Mrs. Grove. Aye. And Mrs. Petracca.
Aye.